Have you ever noticed something? When a tiger gets hurt while hunting, the first thing it does isn't to puff up and fight. It doesn't pretend everything's fine. No, and it retreats, hides away, and begins to heal. It knows it's hurt, and it chooses to prioritize recovery. Because if it doesn't heal, it dies. So what about us? We, the species that's supposed to be the smartest, most advanced, we often ignore, deny, or brush off our emotional wounds. We keep pushing forward, keep working, smiling, joking around, acting like nothing's wrong until we completely burn out. Hey friends, it's me again. And today we're diving into a topic that every single one of us goes through, but not many are willing to really face. Emotional pain. And why healing isn't just an option but a matter of survival. Let's get real. In our own lives, we carry wounds too. And sometimes those wounds are even more painful than a tiger's torn flesh or broken bones. These are the invisible wounds, the ones in our soul. Loneliness, hopelessness, guilt, self-blame. They can break us down and hurt us in ways that feel unbearable. And yet, sometimes we don't even realize they're there. Or worse, we don't allow ourselves the time or space to pause, to stop, and truly heal those emotional injuries. So here's the question. Why is it that animals, a tiger, a dog, a cat, can instinctively recognize their pain and take the time to heal? But we, as humans, seem to lose that ability? In my experience, there are two main reasons. The first is this. The tiger's wound is physical, which means it's easy to see. It's obvious. There's blood. There's a limp. There's clear pain. And let's be honest, if we had a similar physical injury today, like a cut, a scrape, torn skin, a sprain, or even a broken bone, what would we do? We'd get help. Immediately, no question. So when it comes to physical pain, we're actually pretty good at recognizing it. And we're quick to prioritize healing. But the problem is, emotional and psychological wounds aren't like that. They're invisible. You're hurting, but you can't see it. You don't fully understand the depth of your own pain. And especially, the people around you can't see it either. So we don't recognize it. And we don't treat it like it matters. That's the first reason why we don't heal. The second reason, and honestly, I think this one is even more important, is the way we live today. This modern, civilized, fast-paced world we're part of, it scatters our attention. Because nowadays, when you're sad or hurting, there are so many painkillers available to instantly numb that emotional or mental discomfort. You can scroll through your newsfeed and read endless funny posts, lighthearted stories, or heartwarming pictures. You can binge funny videos on YouTube. You can hop on TikTok and swipe through short, easy, entertaining clips that make you feel just a little bit better for now. And over time, we're being conditioned, trained really, to turn to these instant fixes more and more. Why? Because that's exactly how tech companies make massive profits. Through ads and engagement. Eventually, we get addicted to these temporary solutions. We reach for them instead of looking inward, instead of facing ourselves, instead of going deep to understand and heal the real source of our pain and anxiety. We're using quick fixes to deal with our difficult emotions, but it doesn't stop there. This habit of spending too much time with tech, with screens, has another consequence. We stop noticing the people around us. We lose the ability to recognize the hurt, the pain, the loneliness in our dad, in our mom, in our partner, or even in our best friend sitting right in front of us. And that, to me, is the deeper, more serious reason. It comes from the very way we're living in today's modern world. That's why we're seeing something so clear now. Gen Z, especially young people today, aren't struggling with physical hunger like past generations. They're dealing with a deep emotional and spiritual hunger. And that's exactly why I created this episode. This is me bringing together everything I've learned over the years through my own journey of healing, a personal reflection, and a guide to help you start recognizing your inner wounds. We're going to talk about 8 signs that can help you tune into your body, your emotions, and ask yourself, am I carrying some kind of emotional trauma that needs healing? So, if anything I'm about to share speaks to you, helps you in some way, I truly hope you'll join me in spreading this message. Send it to someone you care about. You never know. You might just help them in a way they've been needing for a long time. All right, are you ready? Let's go. So, first things first. What is emotional trauma, really? It's what happens after a major life event. One that hits you with intense stress and pressure, often way beyond what you feel capable of handling. But it doesn't always come from a single dramatic moment. Sometimes it's the result of something that's repeated over and over again. Small hurts, little moments, slowly wearing you down over a long, long time. Emotional trauma often comes from things like losing someone you love, the end of a deeply meaningful relationship, growing up in an environment where you were constantly rejected or neglected. Maybe you were abused, maybe you were bullied over and over again as a kid. And now, let's dive into the signs, the clues, that you might still be carrying emotional wounds today. Sign number 1. You become suspicious when something good happens in your life. Have you ever felt this? Everything suddenly seems to be going too well, and you start to worry. Is something bad about to happen? Why is this person being so kind to me? Do they want something? What's the catch? You doubt happiness. You question goodness. This usually comes from a past experience that planted a deep belief in you that you don't deserve good things. Maybe something happened that left you feeling guilty, ashamed, or broken. And because of that, you subconsciously push away joy. You don't let yourself fully receive happiness because deep down, you don't believe you deserve it. Sign number 2, you need to have everything planned out perfectly. You're someone who loves control. You like having a plan. You want every detail lined up just right. And whenever something doesn't go the way you expected, it throws you off. You get tense. You snap. You feel thrown into chaos. Does that sound familiar? Do you know someone like this? Now look, planning is not a bad thing. Having structure and goals is healthy. But when your need for control becomes rigid, intense, and overwhelming, when you can't handle unpredictability, that usually comes from a time in your life when you had no control at all. Maybe you went through something that made you feel helpless, stuck, completely lost. Like you were drowning and no one was there to help. And in order to survive that moment, you built a defense. If I can just control everything, myself, my environment, the people around me, maybe I won't have to feel that vulnerable ever again. It became your way of protecting yourself. Sign number 3, you have an intense fear of failure. Now, of course, it's natural. Nobody wants to fail. We all fear it to some extent. But this is different. This is when that fear becomes so overwhelming that it overshadows your desire to try, to create, to grow, to succeed. And when that happens, it becomes dangerous because it starts robbing you of your potential. It kills creativity. It stunts your growth. It holds you back from expressing your full abilities. This often comes from past experiences where mistakes were constantly met with criticism, not compassion. For example, when you were a kid and came home with a B on your test, the first thing your parents said might have been, "Why did you get 3 questions wrong? What happened?" Instead of, "Wow, great job. You got 7 answers right." And that kind of feedback, at home, at school, slowly teaches a child that mistakes are not okay. That failure equals rejection. That making an error means you're bad or not enough. And so you grow up fearing failure, so much so that you avoid it entirely. You stop trying. And ironically, that fear ends up destroying your real shot at success. Sign 4. You're afraid of success. I know, it sounds strange. But this is real, and it happens more often than you think. Some people are incredibly talented. They're smart, confident, and capable. They do great work, but right before they hit the finish line, they suddenly quit. Have you ever seen someone like that? Maybe at work. Maybe in your circle of friends. Maybe you recognize it in yourself. They perform so well. And then when they're this close to a breakthrough, their spirit just collapses. They give up and walk away. This kind of behavior often traces back to an old emotional wound tied to loss. Losing a loved one, or the collapse of a deeply important relationship. I once had a friend who was exactly like this. He was brilliant, hardworking, focused, extremely capable. But every single time he was on the verge of success, he'd pull away. After many deep conversations, I finally learned the truth behind it all. A heartbreaking story from his childhood. He once played in a big soccer tournament. He gave it everything he had, and his team won. He was thrilled, overjoyed. He came home, holding on to that moment of pride. And that's when he found out. His mother had passed away. From that moment on, something broke inside him. He couldn't stop blaming himself. If only I hadn't tried so hard. If I hadn't stayed out so long celebrating. If I hadn't gone to that game, maybe I would have seen her one last time. Deep down, he carried a crushing belief. Because I tried to win. My mom died. That trauma was never processed, never healed, and it quietly sabotaged his life for years. Every time he got close to success, that old fear would resurface. A fear that if I win, something terrible will happen. So he'd quit. Again and again, stuck in a painful loop, unable to break free. Sign 5. You're the nice one, always ready to help others, but too afraid to ask for help yourself. Have you ever found yourself in that situation? Someone needs something. You're there. Someone asks for help. You say yes, no hesitation. But when you need support, when you just want someone to listen, you hold back. You start second-guessing, what if I'm being a burden? What if they say no? You keep showing up for everyone else, until one day you realize you've lost your time and energy. Your own tasks and goals are falling behind. You're mentally exhausted, but still, you suffer in silence. This pattern is so common in people with low self-worth. They genuinely believe they don't deserve support. They fear being a nuisance, and deep down, they don't really see their own value. This can come from a childhood where they were ignored, neglected, or bullied. Sometimes it doesn't even take a major trauma. Just years of quiet loneliness. Tiny moments of feeling unseen. Repeated over and over again. I know this because I used to be one of those people. Even during my years as a CEO running multiple projects, I didn't have a personal assistant. Not because I couldn't, but because I was so used to handling everything on my own. Even the smallest tasks. Growing up, my parents were always busy. My dad was a doctor. He worked long hours, day and night. And somehow I internalized the belief that I shouldn't bother anyone. Especially not the people I love. So I just managed things alone. Always. It wasn't until I got older that I realized my parents didn't abandon me. They loved me. And they were showing it, just in the only way they knew how. Once I understood that, I slowly learned how to open up, to ask for help, to let people in. Sign 6. You're friendly and kind with strangers, but easily snap at your loved ones. Some people are warm, cheerful, and incredibly patient with everyone outside their home. But once they walk through the front door, it's a different story. They become short-tempered, reactive, even explosive, with the people they care about most. And after each outburst comes the guilt, the shame. They withdraw emotionally, isolating themselves when they're in pain. In those moments of solitude, they hurt themselves through their thoughts, their feelings, even their actions. But here's something important to understand. People who hurt others are often the ones carrying the most unhealed hurt inside. They've been holding it in for a long time, trying to appear strong in public, like they've got it all together. But inside, they're barely holding on. And when that pressure builds too high, the pain spills over onto the people closest to them. Many of them were bullied, neglected, or abused in the past. And without realizing it, they start repeating that same pain, just in a different form. That's how emotional trauma gets passed down, from one generation to the next. So I want to say something from the heart. When you begin to listen, to understand, and to heal yourself, you're not just doing it for you. You're doing it for the people you love and for the generations that will come after you, because they will inherit your healing, not your hurt. Sign 7. Emotional instability. Frequent mood swings without a clear reason. One of the clearest signs that you may be carrying unhealed psychological wounds is this. Your emotions shift suddenly, and you don't even know why. You might start feeling anxious or restless, as if something bad is about to happen, but you don't know what. Easily irritated or angry, even over things that never used to bother you. Disconnected from things you used to love, your job, your hobbies, or even close relationships. Numb, unmotivated, unable to see anything in the future worth looking forward to. Unable to sleep or sleeping too much. Loss of appetite or eating excessively just to escape from the emotions. Constant fatigue, not physical, but emotional exhaustion that drains you every day. All of these are ways your body and your mind are trying to speak to you. They're signals, signs that something inside you is hurt and needs to be seen, heard, and healed. Many people misread this as just stress from work or think, maybe I'm just changing as a person. But in reality, these mood swings often trace back to a hidden wound, a loss you never truly accepted, a traumatic moment you buried deep inside, a painful memory that never got processed. And the truth is, emotional wounds don't disappear with time. They don't fade away on their own. They just go silent until the moment you're vulnerable and they resurface. And finally, sign number 8, a deep sense of I'm not enough, always comparing, always feeling less than. This sign is subtle but extremely damaging. You constantly feel like you're not good enough, no matter how well you're doing. You feel like everyone else is happier, more talented, more deserving than you. You downplay your own success, and because deep down you don't feel worthy of it. You compare yourself to friends, coworkers, even strangers, and you always come out losing in your own eyes. When someone compliments you, you brush it off, saying it was just luck. In relationships, you tend to tolerate too much, settle too often, or give too much, because you believe you don't deserve real love. This mindset usually begins in childhood, in environments where love was conditional, where worth was tied to achievements, where no matter how hard you tried, you didn't feel seen. Maybe you were constantly compared to siblings, classmates, or that perfect kid next door. You were criticized, ridiculed, or heard too many things like, "Why can't you be more like? You're never going to amount to anything." Or maybe you gave it your all, and still, no one seemed to notice. Over time, this leads to a quiet but powerful belief. no matter what I do, I'll never be enough. And that belief is one of the most dangerous forms of emotional trauma because it silently erodes your self-worth. It disconnects you from your joy, your power, and your place in the world. Final thoughts. All of these signs are your body's way of telling you there's a wound that needs to be seen, and it's time to start healing. We may not be able to solve all our emotional pain in a single video, but the most important first step toward healing is simply being aware and willing to accept that these wounds exist. That alone is powerful. And in fact, it's often the hardest step in the entire healing process. So right now, I invite you to take a quiet moment and gently look back at the signs I've just shared. Ask yourself, am I experiencing any of these symptoms? What does it look like in my life? Is there a memory, a moment in my past that still lingers in my heart when I think about it? And if you do recognize a wound, please remember two important things. First, don't panic, don't be scared, don't overreact. Because the truth is, emotional wounds are just like physical wounds. They're no different from a scraped knee, a sprained ankle, or a broken bone. It's normal. And it's okay to say, hey, I think I've been hurt. The reason so many of us feel ashamed or afraid is because our education rarely talks about mental health. So when we finally recognize it, it feels foreign, even scary. But it doesn't have to be. What we need is openness, the courage to listen to our wounds, the clarity to assess how serious they are, and the wisdom to seek help when needed. That doesn't mean you always need a psychologist. Not every wound needs therapy. If you're still able to function, still in control, then take a breath. You're okay. But don't ignore it either. When emotional wounds begin to interfere with your daily life, relationships, or peace of mind, it's a gentle signal that reaching out to a mental health professional might be the next step. To truly heal from emotional wounds, remember, don't ignore them. Actively listen, understand, and address them early, while they're still fresh, because the sooner we see them, the easier it becomes to heal. Right now, give yourself this moment. Reflect on those 8 signs. See which ones show up in your life, and take that first step to reconnect with your true self. And before we end, I just want to say this to you. Emotional wounds are not something to be ashamed of. Everyone has them. Some more, some less. But the real question is, do we have the awareness to recognize them and the courage to face them? Healing is not a sign of weakness. Healing is a form of self-love. It's what strong, self-aware people do when they choose to care for themselves. To walk into their shadows and search for light again. And sometimes, all it takes is a moment of stillness, a moment of honesty, a moment of listening deeply to yourself. And you've already walked halfway home. Because if a wounded tiger knows to return to its cave and tend to its wounds, then surely we, as human beings, can allow ourselves the same grace to pause, to rest, to heal, and to begin again. Thank you for listening. If you recognize any of these signs in yourself, know this. You are not alone. You are worthy of healing. Gently, slowly, but fully. I wish you peace in your mind, warmth in your heart, and the strength that has always been inside you. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.